Hive cities are a richer environment, constructed over millennia into huge structures that resemble termite mounds, breaking ground level and reaching high into the Necromundian atmosphere. Everything you could imagine within a sprawling metropolis exists within the Underhive. If all you're using in your terrain builds are Zone Mortalis and Sector Mechanicus, you are doing the environment an injustice and missing out on lots of fun possibilities in your hobby.
Welcome back to Immersive Worldcrafter. It's 2021 and I wish you all a very happy new year. I've returned to making videos and tutorials, having planned the whole season that this is the introduction to. A season of grimdark worldcrafting set within the feudal industrial imperial hive city of Necromunda. I'm a fan of that expression, feudal industrial, that I first saw coined by terrain crafter Daniel Hanowski on his Instagram. Here, he has created a distinctly film noir vibe to Necromunda. Achieved with construction of large brickwork walls, concrete slab pavements, corrugated shopfront shutters, and overhanging cables alongside the typical plasteel and ceramite structures found within our Zone Mortalis terrain kits. Feudalism I had to look up and found it was a system of law, economics, military, and cultural customs that pertain to medieval Europe between the 9th and 15th centuries. It is also mentioned briefly in the 2017 Necromunda rulebook, which says, "No attempt is made to enforce central administration upon the time population. Indeed, such a thing would prove impossible in a world where most people remain unrecorded by any authority. Instead, a kind of feudal system has evolved by which individuals owe loyalty to others, who, in their turn, owe their loyalty to increasingly more powerful members of the hierarchy." We can also describe something as being feudal if it is absurdly outdated or old-fashioned. This is certainly fitting for Necromunda that has laid waste to its once resource-rich world as its cities crumble beneath ground level into its sump seas below. The Cambridge Dictionary elaborates too that in a feudal society, people at one level of society receive land to live and work on from those higher than them in rank, and in return have to work for them and fight for them if necessary, sometimes also giving them some of the food they produce. Now, if we extrapolate that to the Imperial House Halmar, the noble houses, the clan houses, and then scummers of Necromunda, it all begins to become very clear how all the best resources in the Underhive move up through the echelons of the Hive City, whilst both the figurative and literal shit runs downstream. The purpose of this season is to bring you a set of techniques and thought-provoking suggestions on how to enrich your Underhive terrain with some realism, including hive activity and what they leave behind, plus provide you with an assortment of materials beyond the metal structures that we're provided with in our terrain kits. Now feels like the perfect time to be broadcasting this, with all of the artwork and terrain being created throughout the Necromunda community. For instance, the Book of Life authored by Carl Johnson, or the Sumphulk, which is a narrative being created by Sol Vince and being shaped by many involved in this project, including me. I will leave links and contact information for all the projects that I mentioned within this video, and I'll include those down in the description down below. I don't want to go into detail on what I have planned for each episode in this series. I will list the episodes I have planned, however. There should be many in the list that from the title should give you a good explanation of what to expect within that particular video. Others will perhaps be vaguer until I flesh out the details and work out what content I'm actually going to put into each of those videos. The first tutorial will be on how to create realistic looking detritus, rubbish piles, midden heaps and rubble. Following that, there is more than metal in the Underhive, which will include modelling wet rot on wooden planks as well as dry rot on wooden planks, how to whittle plastic sprues into timber, and also this is where the obscure comes in. So nature always finds a way, which is going to be to do with Carl Johnston's The Book of Life, but I'll give you a bit more information as that one comes along. Next, I've got the building blocks and destruction, which is converting 95, so the 1995 Necromunda bulkheads into walls, reproducing the 1995 Necromunda cardstock into 3D plastic terrain using plasticard, craft exposed rebar into walls, floors and pillars, which would be a really exciting one. And if you've been following on my Instagram, then you have a bit of a feel for that already. Talking more about this feudal industrialism and how we can get that look and feel. And then also breaking the grid. So that's taking the zone mortalis tiles, which are standard 1 foot by 1 foot, and got a certain amount of tiles, taking that 1 foot by 1 foot square and providing something that's a little bit more interesting by breaking that grid up, making something which is a little bit more juxtaposed and, I don't know, interesting to the eye, I guess. Something a bit more out of the ordinary. We will then go on to a section called settlements, which I'm going to be looking at taking old computer cases, so the nice old metal computer cases, the tower cases, and making Necromunda buildings in and around those, essentially. So having, perhaps like a skyscraper, which is using a whole case, or providing like little shanty buildings, which kind of hang off the side of it. Which would be interesting. I'm then going to be looking more at the Sumphulk. So, as I mentioned about solvents and his Sumphulk, and some of the aesthetics around that, and how I can make settlements and buildings which are going to be fitting that particular vibe. And Heatsink stack shanty habs. So this kind of sort of ties into a bit of the computer case and having those sort of shanty buildings hanging off the side. I'm thinking of something a bit more like a heatsink, a bit more cylindrical perhaps, and how you can have this kind of like favela of buildings rising up onto the sides of the heatsink, essentially. I then have a section which I call Venditores, which is looking at Administratum buildings, Officio Medicae, Departmento Munitorum, so having your manufactories and your fabricatories, ablutions blocks. So a lot of these I've picked up from reading some of the Black Library books, such as Ravener and Eisenhorn, and some of the Necromunda novels. And then also there's a few which have got hive cities which are appearing within the Warhammer horror novels. Looking at some of the buildings for the guilds, such as the Guild Masoni. I've got faith paper vendors, flotsam stalls, gampers. So gampers, I think that appears in, if I remember correctly, I think it's in Ravener, and possibly the first book, but not 100%. It's been a little while since I've read it now. Anyway, I digress. It is an umbrella. You've got I see it as being some servitors, which whenever it starts raining, acid rain, they just pop open these big umbrellas, these gampers, which allow the residents to go about their business freely without having to be burnt alive by acid rain. And then finally in this section, eateries. So looking at large markets, armoured munitorum containers which have got shop fronts within them, all of those sorts of different types of things. And then the final section I've got it's the long tail of territories. So I've gone through all of the territories which are in the 2017 rulebook and also the 1995 rulebook, the ones that I think are interesting. There's a little bit of overlap. Just to take you through just a few of them, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you've got the Old Ruins, Road Dock Shop, Promethean Caches, Wastes, Sludge Seas, Fighting Pits, Chem Pits, Spore Caves, those types of things, and how I can go into lots of interesting details around what these feel like, what sort of materials the buildings are made out of, or the environments.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more techniques on how to terraform the Grimdark Underhive, please subscribe and turn on notifications to avoid missing an episode. Also, feed the YouTube algorithm, letting them know this content is useful by leaving a comment down below, whether that be support, Discord, or suggestion. Please consider supporting me to create more content like this in the future and my journey making improvements on the production by becoming a patron. I've provided a link to this in the description.
So as you can see, there's a lot of content that can be covered within this season, and I'm really looking forward to it. In the next episode, I'll be taking you through the first tutorial on how to make realistic looking detritus, rubbish piles, midden heaps and rubble. So thanks for tuning in and listening to what's going to be upcoming in this season, and I'll see you in the next one.